Pikmin 4 is no laughing matter. This game is a masochist's wet dream of design. Critics of the first few games Oh, come on! If you've been following my channel since I started almost 4 years ago, which is exactly one person, thanks host gang, then you know one of my first videos was about the Water Wraith boss in Pikmin 2. It still stands as the most unique battle in the series, at least in my opinion. Which is why it pains me to say that when the Water Wraith came back 19 years later in Pikmin 4, Nintendo really dropped the ball and made the series' most unnerving enemy a shell of its former self. Pikmin 4 saw the return of many series bosses, and that's great, don't get me wrong. But the combat in Pikmin 4 is so dumbed down that most are way too easy for their own good. And it's that damn dog. Listen, I love you, Ochi, but you simultaneously make Pikmin 4 better and worse. Cooler puzzles with you, but you make combat a joke. And combat is half of Pikmin's gimmick. Now, blaming Ochi for everything isn't telling the full story of these ruined bosses. Well, okay, ruined is an exaggeration just to get people to click on this video, which, by the way, thank you for checking this out. There are other issues in general that ruin many of the bosses in this game. Hell, even without Ochi, the combat of this game is really easy compared to the other 3 main entries. Enemies in the overworld don't even respawn. The throw pointer auto-locks on enemies, it's just, wow, the combat in this game is bad. Don't get me wrong though, I love Pikmin 4 a lot. I played it so much, I 100%ed the game and I think it's a great game overall. I even have a poster of it in my office. I just think Pikmin 2 and 3 are better. And if Pikmin 4 didn't include a mini remake of Pikmin 1 in it, I probably would like that one more too. But to the point of the video. In Pikmin 2, the Water Wraith serves as the boss of the Submerged Castle, the only cave in the game that only allows one Pikmin type, blues. So the cave has a unique and foreboding theme that plays as you go through its rather dark caverns. And if you take too long to leave a floor, this strange beast will chase you while screeching at the top of its lungs. Your Pikmin can't hurt it, all you can do is run. It's actually the only boss in the series that follows you through multiple sublevels of a cave. When you get to the final sublevel, there's nowhere left to run. But there are these candy pop buds nearby to transform your blue Pikmin into the much stronger purple type. And this is the Water Wraith's weakness. Now you and it are on the same playing field. If you want a more in-depth explanation, please watch my original video on it. Or don't, I don't know. The Water Wraith left a great impression on fans, with many calling it the scariest boss in the series. And just to remind you, this is a series that has giant spiders. I know as a kid, I was scared shitless of this guy. Which is weird considering he's just Bubble Buddy from SpongeBob. And it's just so weird with how it's treated by the game. It's the only boss, besides the final one, to have more than one theme song. And it's one of the few bosses to not have a rematch in the main campaign. All the characters react so oddly to it. It's just so weird compared to the other bosses, like a bad dream you have once, and never again. But you always remember it. The Wraith was so iconic that the final boss of Pikmin 3 ended up being a larger, more intimidating version of it, but with the scare factor dropped down. And then the Water Wraith came back in Pikmin 4, found here in the Engulfed Castle. You see, they have the Submerged Castle, we have the Engulfed Castle. The Water Wraith is back and it's the same, but easier, making it by default less scary. So with Ochi the dog, you can just have all your Pikmin riding on his back and you can quickly scurry away. At times I would forget the Water Wraith was even there chasing me. Whatever, I mean, it's still the most unique fight, right? Well, remember how I said the Water Wraith was so unique in Pikmin 2? Mainly because you only fought it once? Well, you fight it at least 4 times in Pikmin 4, and it's probably gonna be more. In the Trial of the Sage Leaf, the Water Wraith serves as what you might be able to consider the final boss of this cave. So the gimmick here is that you have to take the purple onion back to the ship, and you barely have enough time to do it. This challenge is really hard in many ways. The Water Wraith is not one of them though. You're able to get purple Pikmin so early that you can easily take it out. But with the rest of this challenge being so hard, I had to refight the Wraith over, and over, and over, and over, and over again. So unlike the other times where I wonder, oh god, the Water Wraith is coming, can I beat it? It turned into, oh come on, I have to deal with the Water Wraith again? How long is it going to take for me to beat it this time? 2 minutes? 30 seconds? I think this is like my 40th time destroying it. Yeah, I guess my point is that besides the general combat being too easy, the main thing that killed the Water Wraith in Pikmin 4 is overexposure. Or maybe it was the purple Pikmin that killed it. The Smoky Progg is the rarest enemy in Pikmin 1. only one in the entire game, in one area, only on days 15 or before. And being that it's in the distant spring, most players aren't going to get here in time to meet it. And even if you do, it's still out of the way to get to. Like, you're probably not going to find it without knowing it's there, or if you're just really nosy. So, a quick aside, I always loved how Pikmin 1 has optional bosses you don't have to fight. Like, rewards for looking around and exploring. We'll actually be covering another one soon. But back to the Smoky Progg. Approach this strange-looking egg and be introduced to the Antichrist of the Pikmin world. This malformed beast of smoke leaves behind a trail of whatever that is, and kills your Pikmin immediately, so be careful throwing. They just disintegrate. Like what the fuck, man? Oh my god. Look at this thing. Its smoky body and glowing eyes. What is this? Everything else in Pikmin 1's world fits as some sort of animal or bug, but this is just evil. It doesn't even care about you at first. It just focuses on destroying your base. You can't swarm it like most other enemies, unless you want your Pikmin getting Chernobled. So much like the Water Wraith, this is a strange, scary boss that seems like nothing else in the game. Unlike the Water Wraith, there really isn't a reason to fight it, and you likely won't fight it by accident. Much like the Water Wraith, it didn't return for a while. Though, oddly enough, it first returned in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as the opening enemy in the World of Light. A very odd choice considering its relative obscurity, especially at the time. I wonder why they chose it to be the first one, and not like a Goomba or something. I'm off track. The Progg returns properly in Pikmin 4, as a boss usually found in the nighttime stages. So first, what is this design? Like, the body isn't smoky anymore. This isn't really a Smoky Progg, it's more like a reptilian Progg now. I don't know. And those eyes don't really glow that bright. And is that a mouth? It looks goofy, you ruined it! And like most Pikmin 4 enemies, it's too easy to take out. It never even targets the player, instead focusing more on the luminals. It does have a new attack, but it's easy to dodge. So yeah, like the Water Wraith, it's no longer scary, and is way too easy. Though, one thing I'll give Pikmin 4 is that they named it Smoke Gloom, and it now looks exactly like the Gloom from Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's a neat little reference. It just still doesn't make up for everything else, though. So this isn't really Pikmin 4's fault as much as it is Pikmin 2's, but 4 doesn't help the issue. So, as I said before, the first Pikmin game had a few bonus bosses that you don't have to fight. Another one of these is the Mamuta, this odd creature that Pikmin 1's official strategy guide calls the God of Pikmin. Now, before you go around thinking how cruel of a god this is, the Mamuta is the only boss in the series that will never kill your Pikmin. No, instead it will smash them back into the ground, which while annoying does immediately turn them into flower Pikmin. Really, Mamuta's just trying to help. The only issue is, it might just mistake Olimar for a Pikmin and whack him as hard as he can. It's the only boss in the series where it's more of a danger to Olimar than it is to the Pikmin. And it's also not a fighter by nature. You can walk up to it and push it around all you want and it won't hit you. You have to attack first. Or you can just be a nice person and not even bother it. So how was it ruined? Simple. It became a normal enemy. Starting with Pikmin 2, the Mamuta was changed from an optional boss to an uncommon normal enemy with less health. The only time in the series, a boss was demoted. And when it returned in Pikmin 4, it became even weaker. Its attacks do much less damage, it can't smack as many Pikmin to the ground as it used to, and I was able to take it out with only a handful of Pikmin. Compare that to Pikmin 1, where I needed a whole army, and the bombs I threw at it barely did any damage. Also, a little side note. Am I the only one who thought the Mamuta was supposed to be made out of rock in its first two appearances? Like, it looks like a rock, and it has a lot of defense. But Pikmin 4 made it clear it's actually a hairy beast. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Also, another note. The Mamuta is to the Smoky Progg as a frog is to a tadpole. Yup, this crazy beast is a larva version of this kind beast. A demon that becomes a kind god. How poetic in a sense. Maybe it shows how even the worst people can change for the better. Or maybe it doesn't. So you know The Last of Us? A very critically acclaimed duology of games, with a massive following that is now one of Sony's biggest cash cows. It's about a fungus that takes over humanity, slowly turns them into zombies, that turn and try to kill their own kind. What if I told you Pikmin did it 12 years earlier? Now, I'm not saying Sony ripped Pikmin off, but I think they owe Captain Olimar a few checks in the mail. Pikmin 1 has a boss called the Puffstool. This goofy looking walking mushroom that mainly runs away. It seems to have no other attack, other than tripping over and crushing Pikmin by accident. But this leaves it completely vulnerable. Just be careful when it gets back up. It releases its spores and takes over your Pikmin, turning them into mushroom Pikmin. Zombies that jump out and attack Olimar. These mushrooms won't stop until either you or it is dead. Mushroom Pikmin are the only Pikmin type that will attack Olimar and other Pikmin. Outside of 2-player battle modes, of course. Although Pikmin 2 did toy around with the idea of mutant Pikmin Bulborbs, still, the Mushroom Pikmin from the Puffstool fight are an unforgettable oddity from the first Pikmin game that disappeared in the next few entries. Fans wondered if the Puffstool would ever return for another fight. It didn't return for Pikmin 2 or 3. It was teased in the spin-off Hey Pikmin, where a similar enemy called the Puffstalk shows up, but it does very little. Now imagine the fandom's surprise and hype when it was leaked out that the Puffstool was in Pikmin 4. And so, when I played the game, I made it to the Primordial Thicket, and I saw that mushroom bastard in the distance. I knew it was go time. It looked so much better in HD, unlike some enemies. Oh, I can't wait to see what the mushroom Pikmin look like. Where are the mushrooms? Why are my Pikmin just jumping around? They aren't even dying. They just look like they're having fun. Yep, mushroom Pikmin aren't in Pikmin 4. Alright, so when fans kept saying they wanted the Puffstool to come back, they actually meant they wanted mushroom Pikmin back. The Puffstool was just the only way we knew how to get them. It's so weird they weren't brought back. Were the developers told they couldn't have Pikmin fighting each other? I mean, that happens in the 2-player mode. It honestly feels like it was just a waste to bring back the Puffstool without mushroom Pikmin. Hell, the game even introduces an alternate form of it, the Toxstool. Now, this version turns certain enemies into mushroom zombies, but none of the Pikmin will turn into mushroom Pikmin. Its fumes instead suffocate Pikmin. Like, come on, why have these guys here if they're just going to not have their main gimmick? It's like if you invited a cool dude to your party, and his okay friend too, just to make sure the cool dude will come. Only for the okay dude to come alone. Also, by the way, I kind of lied before when I said the Puffstool made its main return in Pikmin 4. They actually showed up in The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. Very weird that 2 of the bosses I talked about in this video had references involving Zelda. Alright, I've talked about the issues I've had with returning bosses in Pikmin 4. But in all honesty, if you ignore the general issues with combat being too easy here, the other returning bosses in this game are about as good as they were in their debuts. And some, I would argue, are much better. Now, this video was made to go over what I thought was made worse in Pikmin 4. Hell, this video started out as a video only talking about the Water Wraith before I kept piling on more ideas. But I like my channel to have a more positive outlook than others. So, for the sake of giving Pikmin 4 credit where credit is due, I'd like to talk about a returning boss that I think this game fixes. Well, technically 2, you'll see what I mean. The Emperor Bulblax is the king of Pikmin's main enemy type, the Bulborbs. It serves as the first game's final boss. It's larger than anything else you've fought up to this point, and seemingly invulnerable. It takes some precise use of the bomb rocks to get it in a vulnerable state. The Emperor Bulblax is one of Pikmin 1's 4 bosses to return in Pikmin 2. Now, it's not the final boss anymore, so clearly it won't be hard as in the other game, but that's understandable. I'm sure it'll be a less daunting but still difficult task to take on. Oh. Okay. Listen, I understand it's not the final boss anymore, but did it have to be so easy and small compared to the first game? Hell, it was vulnerable the whole time. You could have at least have it had different states like in Pikmin 1. This is probably the worst comeback for any boss in the series, going from final boss to joke. It next appeared at Hey Pikmin as the penultimate boss. It's still a very easy battle, which is odd considering it's late in the game, but at least it's treated like a big deal and is back to being huge. And when it came back in Pikmin 4, it's back to how it was in 2. Come on guys, you take a step forward just to go right back. Honestly, this is such a joke and what's that? Daddy's back. Yup, after faking you out with the Pikmin 2 Emperor, the game throws you the one from the first game, revealing the true boss. The game ends up calling the larger form the Sovereign Bulblax, so technically these are now 2 separate bosses. But at the very least, our king is back and better than ever. Thanks Pikmin 4, you really fixed this here. And that's my opinion on half the returning bosses in Pikmin 4. most of which I think aren't as good as they once were. The ones I didn't mention I think are fine enough. And really, I think Pikmin 4 has some cool new bosses to make up for this. The Gildamander, Groovy Longlegs, Porculin, and the Sirehound are some of my favorites from this game. And I like all the bosses to different extents, even if some are a bit dull. Thank you again for watching this video. What are your opinions on Pikmin 4's bosses? Or bosses in Pikmin in general? Do you like the combat in Pikmin 4? Please discuss in the comments. I genuinely want to know if people agree or disagree with me. And of course, if you liked this video, please like it. And if you didn't, then dislike. Maybe even subscribe if you'd like to. I'm honestly surprised it took me over 3 years to make a new Pikmin video. It's one of my favorite franchises. I thought I'd make like 20 by now.